Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Wednesday, November 15th. Time for another show and I guess a recap of yesterday's Fight Club on Capitol Hill. I wish we had known at the time when we were speaking to Joan McCarter that everybody was going to start fights on Capitol Hill. Are we up to 3 or is it just 2? I'll have to check in with the Hill, but big news yesterday in the middle of, wars and averting government shutdowns, but setting up another one, and stories about how Trump plans to assume the role of a dictator, basically whether he wins the next election or not, all of those things. But the real news was that there were fights all over Capitol Hill. So that seems pretty strange. Let's see. The Hill has a summary of some of the better-known confrontations, and puts it this way: rising tensions among GOP lawmakers. It wasn't always just Republicans fighting one another, but both in the House and the Senate, all these rising tensions apparently peaked Tuesday with a former speaker, Kevin McCarthy, allegedly taking a kidney shot at another lawmaker, which is maybe a rather expansive way, maybe, of referring to what actually happened. It was pretty funny. But at least there was physical contact in that one. The other one was just a lot of posturing, it seems. So, yeah, I don't know. Do we want to spend any time actually explaining what went on? Apparently, Kevin McCarthy passes Congressman Tim Burchett. Is that it? Burchett, a Tennessee Republican, in the hallway. They, I think, exchange, pleasantries. Hey, how you doing? Yeah, not very pleasant, but at any rate. But Burchett was one of many members who voted with the Republican radicals to eject McCarthy from office. And in passing one another in the hallway, I don't know what the witnesses say to all this, but Burchett becomes convinced that he is elbowed in the back by McCarthy upon passing him and shouts at him, and McCarthy says, I don't know what you're talking about. And it kind of passes. The first reports I saw of this was that maybe McCarthy wasn't entirely clear. He thought maybe that Burchett wasn't entirely clear. He thought McCarthy was maybe kidding with him in some way, but there was no acknowledgement, and so he shouts at him. McCarthy says, I don't know what you're talking about, and starts walking away, and Burchett chases him down the hall saying, why'd you do that, huh? You chicken, huh? Why'd you do that? And essentially, you have to report that, right? That's weird. At the same time, more or less, we began to hear stories about Mark Wayne Mullen, who is, first of all, a real person with a real name, and a senator as well from Oklahoma, although I'm pretty sure he represents Temecula, as it turns out. But he was at a Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions, or HELP, committee hearing, being chaired by Bernie Sanders, by the way, and at which they were questioning the Teamsters, Sean O'Brien, president of the Teamsters Union, and, well, both of them figure they're pretty tough guys. Mark Wayne Mullen is actually apparently a former MMA fighter, which explains how he is a senator from Oklahoma. Football coach, MMA fighter, whatever. And anyway, he didn't like some tweets that Sean O'Brien had sent about him, although honestly they were, they were kind of stupid tweets and not very nice. But yeah, bravado, challenging, they actually were kind of like challenges to a fight, essentially. And of course, Mark Wayne Mullen is, I was elected to Congress because I fight people when I actually say I'm going to fight them. So then there was a lot of shouting at one another about, you start a fight. No, you start a fight. No, you start a fight. It was actually get your butt up, which is interesting, but okay. And at any rate, we had to have Bernie Sanders like step in like school marm here and say, no, sit down. This is Bernie Sanders, right? You are a United States Senator. Sit down. We will not have physical altercations in this committee. I don't remember exactly how it went, but it sounded an awful lot like that. And then Trump came in. I could do that too. But anyway, yeah, so it's pretty crazy out there. I don't know. I thought I heard some hint of some other shouting match somewhere, but maybe it's just the two fights. I don't know. At any rate, nothing to get concerned about given what else is going on. But it's a little wild out there and people are getting a little snippy. Of course, there is always Murdery Trader Green fighting with Lauren Boebert and calling her various words. And I'm not even certain that we covered it all because I think there was another exchange between them. But how much could that matter? Anyway, I don't know. I guess the Hill article, they then go into a recounting of various altercations, shouting matches, and fights that have taken place, because you could go on with that forever. South Carolina Congressman Preston Brooks, was it? This was a little while ago. Came into the Senate with a cane, and he beat... Yeah, this goes back a bit. I'm stretching out the history and making connective tissue here, but all right. Well, we're a bunch of weirdos. Republicans are a bunch of weirdos. They get themselves in these situations because they love to, first of all, they love to elect mixed martial arts fighters and football coaches to office for no particular reason. And then, of course, you have the leader of the other party going around saying violence, it would not only be okay, it would be awesome. Like, actually... affirmatively a good thing to threaten your opponents with physical violence. Not me. Someone else may do it. A lot of people are talking about how they would hit people, but not me. I'm very peaceful. Peacefully beat that guy up, and I'll pay your legal bills. You remember all of that. All right. Greg Dworkin is here. There probably will be no fights whatsoever, and if there are, Bernie Sanders can always step in and settle things down. Good morning, Greg. Good morning, Greg.
Yeah, your mama.
Listen, we're not going to have that kind of talk in this committee.
We're going to have that kind of talk in a different committee.
Yeah.
In the Oversight Committee. That's where James Comer and Jared Moskowitz, Democrat of Florida, had an expletive-laden shouting match during the hearing of the Oversight Committee. That was yesterday afternoon.
I knew there was another one.
Thank you. Comer said, Biden got a loan from his brother. And Moskowitz said, oh, yeah, you gave a loan to your brother. And
what?
Comer said, that wasn't a loan. And Moskowitz said, yeah, that's something to do with your business. And Comer said, I have no business. I have no LLC. And Moskowitz said, yeah, that's because the courts took it away from you.
Did they? That's a good one.
Something along those lines.
A lot of fighting going on, a lot of chippiness. I don't know what that means exactly, but they say it on
NFL. It means the Republicans do not have a functioning majority, and everything flows from that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, probably. I'm very irritated and upset and have a short fuse because we don't have a working majority. Sure.
Right. Liam Donovan had another theory.
Oh?
Since everybody in the Republican Party hates each other, the fact that there's been no recesses, they don't get to go home, they've been together for like 10 weeks, means that everything boils over because you can't stand the person who you are now forced to work with, and that no Congress should have to work for more than 2 weeks at a time without taking a break.
That's interesting. It's an interesting theory, considering there's no end of clips, maybe they're old now, of opinions that were exactly the opposite. Oh, back in our day when Tip O'Neill would drink with people after, and they didn't leave Washington. They didn't leave for every recess, and they stayed here, and they worked side by side, and they got to know one another.
They lived together, right?
Yeah, right.
They all got rooms together in a boarding house or something.
Right, and then...
Because they couldn't afford to live here otherwise.
Anymore. That doesn't work. Everybody's fighting. It must mean the opposite. Everybody needs to go home a lot.
Yeah.
All right.
Something.
Write a book.
So, it's all interesting. What does it all mean? Basically, it means that it's a tense place because nothing gets done, and they all know that one party is completely fascist and is trying to pretend that January 6th never happened, and the other one is trying to point out it did happen. We all remember. We have PTSD from it. You do too. and what you're
That's
doing
why
isn't
you're fighting
working.
all the time. Maybe that's it.
The core of the tension.
Okay. Maybe they all need massages, or I don't know. I guess
that should be the Democrat slogan: massages, not misogyny.
Yeah, right. If the strip malls are any indication, they all need vapes, I guess. Although
right.
that seems
That's
to be
Mike
Lauren
Johnson's
Boebert's problem.
That's his slogan.
Yeah.
Strip malls, not strip clubs.
Right. But if you do go to a strip club,
because he got to start.
The computer should tell me. No, I didn't know that.
Start
it. Oh, okay. I was going to say
it just riled him up so much that he
like?
just had to get into politics to fix things.
Right. Well, lots of people are motivated to politics. Your clothes are in the wrong place. I have to run the country.
Yeah, something like that.
Sure.
Speaking of running the country, I think one of the interesting things, you don't have to go into detail on all these stories. I'm going to give you three or four of them just to give you a flavor of what's going on. You may recall Trump said on Veterans Day that his opposition were vermin.
Right. It's alliteration. That's all.
And the New York Times treated it as Trump takes an alternative approach to Veterans Day. People got upset about that. They're continuing with it, by the way, because the next thing that they
had a poll, a Siena poll.
Trump campaign officials try to play down contentious 2025 plans.
Oh.
It's freaking fascist.
Yeah, well, play down contentious German war plans.
Right. Whatever. So my point is actually the media outside of the New York Times is covering this pretty well. And I'll give you some examples.
All right.
This is from Vox. When Trump tells you he's an authoritarian, believe him. He's talking like a fascist. He's planning fascist policies. He's staffing up with fascists. This is an opinion piece in the same New York Times. Jamel Boy, who's different than the people who write the headlines for the news stories. Trump wants us to know he will stop at nothing in 2025. This is the Bulwark.
Well, let's get some nothing then.
Yeah, Trump's next big lie is already here. With false claims of weaponization, Trump is inflaming the same sentiments that led to January 6th. And I took away from that article not so much that Trump's lies are going to help him win, but rather Trump's lies are going to help him incite more violence.
Yeah.
And that's why it's more concerning. I'm not that concerned that he's going to win. I think he's going to lose. The major reason, we'll go into detail on that, is that I believe that there is an anti-MAGA majority in this country. When you mobilize them, they win elections. And that's been happening since 2016, when everybody realized they made a big mistake. They still don't like Hillary.
Yeah.
And I'm going to actually use something a little different to kind of illustrate perhaps what happened in 2016. But it's a completely different topic. I just think that they're related. And it's a piece by Tom Edsall. Which is called Overturning Roe Changed Everything. Overturning Affirmative Action Did Not.
Okay. Yeah.
And he tries to explore why, when the Supreme Court did these two things, people reacted strikingly to one, which is to say Roe Dobbs and, as recently as Ohio and the elections in Virginia. In other words, people rose up and said, we don't want this.
Yes.
And when they overturned affirmative action, people said, meh. And he's trying to figure out why.
Well, I have an idea. But all right.
Yeah.
He probably has the same one. Kind of an inherent, if not racism, then just sort of, it's personally affects a lot more. There's more women than black people, generally speaking.
Well, he actually has a very interesting conclusion that he gets to from talking to a whole bunch of different people, which is what he does. Okay. And he says, basically, there's three kinds of issues.
All right.
There's partisan issues, like where should your taxes go?
Okay.
Right. It's nonpartisan issues, like should we support the space program?
I mean, that's tax dollars. Okay.
But I mean, roughly,
there's overlap. All right.
Vaccines used to be a nonpartisan issue. Now it's a partisan issue.
There's overlap. I think he would acknowledge
sure.
that.
I mean,
okay.
But then there's a third set of issues that really don't fit that category particularly well. And an affirmative action is there. And basically what it comes down to,
in space,
we have all been moving to the left in regard to big issues for 50 years. Okay. The issue isn't whether or not people want fairness or equality. It's choosing between the two. What if you have a choice between being fair and assuring equality? And his point is that most people pick being fair. And what that means is they may support something in theory, but they don't like the way it's done in practice.
Okay.
And school desegregation is a great example. In theory, people love school desegregation and to be fair and to have, non-apartheid type of schools. But in practice, they hate busing to achieve that goal, because it means disruption to your family, and your kid has to be on the bus for an hour, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there can be a difference between what you want and how you see the plan to get there.
Okay.
And the problem with affirmative action is that people don't necessarily think it's a bad idea to have, fair representation, let's say, in secondary schools and especially in colleges. But how you get there with, giving preference to certain groups is extremely unpopular with the public. They don't like the remedy. They like the goal, but they don't like the remedy. And that's not uncommon in politics.
Okay.
And the problem with Roe is they don't like the goal that Roe, overturning Roe's trying to do.
Well, that's a good
so it's different.
Qualitative
and so what
difference.
happened is the Supreme Court said, well, we're going to overturn and take rights away, and too bad for you, we're going to do it anyway. And the public said, we don't want this. And so at every level, they've shown that they don't want this. With affirmative action, they said, we get that everybody wants to be equal. Same with voting rights. We get it, but we're going to take issue with the way you get there. And so with affirmative action, people said, well, maybe the way to get there wasn't all that great. It's never been particularly popular. It's never even been particularly majority popular with blacks.
Well, that may I don't know. Okay. Well, maybe if
so
that's the case,
I guess so you don't get this outcry. With, with other issues, you do. It sort of depends. With Roe and Dobbs, it's completely organic because the public said, we see what you, the Supreme Court, are doing to our rights, and we're not having it.
I guess, yeah. I mean, I think there's
so what does that got to do with 2016? People didn't like Trump, but they didn't like the solution, which was Hillary. So she lost.
Okay. I guess, yeah. But now that, I don't know, but now that people, I guess, maybe have seen the effects of it, I don't know whether they would change their minds about if she were running again. But yeah, I think there are certainly more voters who are now saying, oh, no, actually, now I understand that I don't like the alternative, but that's not what you're asking.
That's really not the issue now because Hillary's not running. When it was Biden versus Trump, they said, okay, Biden.
Yeah, and now, of course,
but that's why I think that Biden
is
got a better chance in the 2024 election than Trump does. Trump has done nothing to grow his support. Nothing.
That's
He's done a lot to lose it.
Yes, and a lot of them have died.
The issues with Biden is people haven't rallied around him yet, but that's because the election isn't here yet.
Yeah, that's certainly part of it. And
so I think that there's a lot of work to do, don't get me wrong, and I think if you don't do that work, he's in trouble. But you do the work, and I think you can get to where you need to be, and that's because there is, in fact, a anti-MAGA majority. And that's something that Michael Podhorzer is writing about, the off-year election variants of mad poll disease. Mad poll disease is, we are accurate. We're the most accurate pollster in this, and this, and look how accurate we were last Tuesday. And Podhorzer said, well, yeah, that's because you're looking at your poll right before the election. Tell us about how accurate you were a year before Virginia. Tell us about how accurate you were a year before anything. And the answer is, you don't even poll then. And if you did, you wouldn't know what you were talking about because nobody does. So you can't look at the poll the day before the election and compare it to a year before the election and say we're the most accurate pollster. Look what we get. Look at Emerson.
Why?
Emerson says that Bashir's in trouble in Kentucky. Well, that's not true.
Well, he was in trouble.
Was right before the election. So if Emerson has a poll out now saying that Biden is trailing by 17 or whatever, or 3 or whatever they do, just making it up. But the point is, ignore it.
Okay.
So that's mad poll disease.
Ignoring.
And he says, did the polls really get it right? Well, he talks about that familiar pattern because everybody claims they did, but it's just apples and oranges to compare a poll year out compared to a poll year a week out.
That is
so.
Odd
How should you think about the elections?
Claim something like that. Yeah.
Tuesday's election returns confirm that the anti-MAGA majority, he writes, is still the most important and least discussed fact about American politics today. We talk about Dobbs, we talk about Roe, but we don't talk about the anti-MAGA majority enough. To a very great extent, our federal elections beginning in 2016 have more than anything else been about one choice: Trump and MAGA or not.
Yeah, okay.
That's one of those rare times in the history where several successive elections have been choices between two profound and sharply different visions of America's future. Since the Civil War, there have been two such times at the end of the 19th century: William Jennings Bryan against William McKinley, and in the 30s over the New Deal. And with that in mind, it's crucial to approach 2024 beginning with the recognition that about 178 million Americans have cast at least one ballot on the Trump MAGA or not question. That's 3/4 of those eligible to vote. And let's unpack that statistic, beginning with the 2016 election, which in terms of turnout seemed pretty consistent with previous elections. Clinton won the popular vote. About 110 million people who voted in both 2016 and 2020 are still on the rolls. And while some of those who supported Clinton have switched to Trump and some former Trump supporters have switched to Biden, there's more evidence than not that the switching hasn't really made all that much difference. And that's important because if you go back and look at all of the focus groups about, well, I moved from Trump to Biden, well, so frickin' what?
Oh, I mean, welcome, but beyond that.
What about the ones who moved from Biden to Trump? So frickin' what? It doesn't matter. Yeah, it's really interesting to talk to those people because they tell you things that are really good sound bites.
In diners.
They don't really tell you anything about what's going to happen in 2024.
Right. Except that more of them will be interviewed in diners.
But since 2016, since people understand what the issues are, turnout's actually been pretty good.
All right.
And these voters favor Biden and Democrats by about a dozen points nationally, post-2016 voters, if you look at all the other elections.
Okay.
And they are the emerging anti-MAGA majority. Remember that? The emerging Democratic majority? This is the emerging anti-MAGA majority, and it's not based on demographics.
All right. Oh, well, that's good news.
Right?
I mean, that's tough to
in swing states, while 2016 voters lean Republican, post-2016 voters lean Democrat. So the razor-thin outcomes in these swing states are determined by how many new anti-MAGA voters show up in November. As was the case in 2020, according to the VoteCast post-election survey, in the 5 states that Biden won by narrow margins, he won post-2016 voters by 8 to 16 points.
Post-2016 voters, meaning what? People who voted for the first time?
Were new voters who came into the system.
All right. Yeah, because
it's just there weren't that many of them, so they didn't make for huge margins. But those that did come in came in voting for Biden.
All right.
Right.
We understand why.
So he says, I know it sounds insultingly obvious to say that Biden's victory depends on turning out his supporters.
I'm insulted.
But that's really the point. You have to do that. The media's approach is to ignore what we know about voters. And that's why, I say, not him, but me, I say it's really important to activate those voters, and that's why Wisconsin and Pennsylvania voters, who have elections, are different than, let's say, Arizona voters, where there wasn't a big election to look at. You haven't activated those voters. The campaigns haven't kicked in.
Yes.
Right?
Come on, activate.
So he says no campaign manager would ever develop a campaign plan built around questions like, how do I get more non-college voters to support Biden?
They wouldn't.
That's not what you do. You go, how do I get the people who have voted for Biden before to stick with him? How do I get them to vote again?
Okay, good.
That's where you should spend your money.
A better question. Yeah, although I feel like, I don't know, I'm always surrounded by people who ask that first question, but they're not managing campaigns, thankfully.
Right, exactly.
Okay, got it.
Right. And so he makes another point. Abortion isn't just abortion. The elections are now about abortions becoming a new piece of conventional wisdom, which is probably wrong. It's about a broader story. reproductive freedom, bundle of MAGA issues, who they are, like Mike Johnson, their determination, because they say, look, we have this whole plan to change things. We're going to put even more non-federalist society judges who are even more right-wing into place. When they say that we have to figure out messaging and maybe 15 weeks, no. You keep accusing us of wanting to ban everything. That's because when we go back and look to see what your 2025 project is and all the other projects about your legal apparatus and who you want to see on the courts, you're trying to get people who will ban everything. That's why we keep saying you're trying to ban everything. And people get it. And they are now making the association between banning abortion entirely and Republican Party. And so that's what happened in Virginia, and that's what happened in Ohio, and that's what will happen in 2024. It's not hard to activate those kinds of voters because the seeds of thinking that are already there.
Yes. No one knows how they got there except for 25 years of Republican campaigning.
Did.
Yeah, right.
Thus, he writes, while many voters have known for a long time that Republicans want to ban abortion, few seriously believed Roe v. Wade would ever be overturned, and now we are where we are.
They did believe that. Yeah, okay. Surprise. They got you on that one.
Right.
All right. Well, I can buy a good deal of that, and I guess I have to. Because
but that's why I, tend to think that Biden actually has the edge, which does not mean he wins. There's not complacency. It only happens if you do the work. We
don't do that.
But you could see the path for what you need to do. When you have a whole bunch of tasks before you that you have to accomplish, and it's daunting because there's so many, at least you can see what you need to do. You need to do this, you need to do that, and the end of the week you get it all done.
Right.
That's what Biden has to do.
I have that problem with that last part, getting it all done by the end of the week, but thankfully there are more professional people than me
and more weeks
doing it, so that's true too. Also, okay, well, all right, we'll be back in 2 minutes with more. Oh, by the way, I have to object to that very first headline from Vox. When Trump tells you blah, 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 you believe him? What? When did that happen? Hi, everybody. It's me, David Waldman. Yes, the same guy who interrupts you all the time. Interrupting you one more time just to tell you again, another reminder that your contributions are what keep this show on the air, and Patreon.com, Patreon.com, is still among the easiest ways to make the sustaining subscription donations that keep us afloat. Are you ready for the pep talk about how our Patreon campaign is still going strong and growing? Well, too bad. Yeah, the plain fact is we actually are headed in the wrong direction, and whereas we once had about 175 monthly patrons, we're now actually down below 150. Time to recruit some more. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. For those of you in a position to support the show, Patreon.com does make it easy to make those secure, recurring monthly contributions to do so. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. We've been through a lot together. The worst of the pandemic, we hope. The worst of the insurrection, we hope. So go ahead and treat yourself. You don't need an excuse. Give yourself the gift of a little something you enjoy in life. Support the show. And of course, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running on those options too. So thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We couldn't, or at least shouldn't, do it without you. Hope you'll be on board soon too. Thanks for all your support. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. When we tell you it's Kagro in the Morning, believe us. Because, I don't know. What else are you going to do? I mean, you could... Never mind. Okay, so where were we? We were going to do another thing. Greg Dworkin was here.
We are going to do another thing. But, I came across this story just now, which I thought was interesting because it fits into our discussion. This is a freewheeling, make-it-up-as-you-go-along sort of thing. Do not try this at home, folks.
That's right.
But this is from Daily Kos. Carrie Elveld, one of the staff members, as a piece, defeating Trump in 2024 is still a driving force for a critical segment of young voters.
Okay.
As Democratic pollster Celinda Lake pointed out in July, even in the event of a 2024 Biden-Trump rematch, the race will be transformed by the entrance of roughly 16 million newly eligible Gen Z voters aging into the electorate since 2020, while roughly 10 million older voters age out, so to speak.
That's putting it gently.
Yeah,
Aging in
putting
is
it-
something I
putting
never
it
heard
gently.
really before. But yeah, aging out, okay.
Whether they went gentle into that good night or
Yeah,
not, they
right.
went into that good night. So the Progressive Consortium Navigator Research
Okay.
homed in on these voters in a series of new focus groups consisting of young Democratic women of color in Nevada, Pennsylvania, and Texas, as well as young independents and Republicans from across the country who remain undecided.
Come on, kids. All right.
And, it reminds me of an old Casey Stengel quote.
Yeah.
He said, the thing about managing is you have to keep the people who hate you away from the people who haven't made up their mind yet.
All right.
So that's important. So, keep MAGA away from these new voters. The Progressive Consortium looked at these voters, and while the insights revealed are not statistically sound because it's focus groups, they do reveal some important takeaways. One, young voters of all partisan stripes are skeptical about the economy and direction of the country, but they still view voting as a civic duty, even if they're not enthusiastic about their choices. What do we always say? A non-enthusiastic vote counts just as much as an enthusiastic vote, so long as you vote.
That's true.
Enthusiasms.
Very important.
When the moderator asked participants what came in mind upon hearing political extremism, they said Trump supporters, GOP-leaning causes. Good. In other words, they're identifying the GOP as extremists,
All right.
which is easy to do. All you got to do is watch Congress.
Yeah.
Right? They try to pass extremist things. When they can't do it, they start fistfights.
That's
When
true.
they can't start fistfights, they threaten to start fistfights.
Yes.
When they can't do that,
Big
they just curse
pastime.
out the opponent. Mm-hmm. Right? So associating the GOP with a post-Dobbs world is like, yeah. And then
Sure.
number three, while the idea of a 2024 Biden-Trump rematch frustrates many young Americans, Democratic women of color are particularly galvanized against Trump. Anybody but Trump. They could put a dog in, I'll pick the dog. That's what we used to call in my day yellow dog Democrats.
Yes. Right.
You run a yellow dog, I'll vote for him.
Right. Dogs are fairly popular, but yeah, that was supposed to be surprising at the time. You would vote for a dog? Yeah, I would. I think Twitter has changed that.
Throughout the focus groups, young voters expressed interest in third-party candidates, but many also concluded voting third-party would be a wasted vote. And so I thought that was an interesting perspective to bring into it. I don't know if you know this, but Jill Stein is threatening to run again.
I do know this.
You know who's upset about that? Cornel West.
Oh, he
You know
wanted
who's
to
not
do
upset
it?
about that? Joe Biden.
Yeah. All right. Well, I wonder whether does she? Well, does she? Who knows? Never mind. I'll just let it go. Okay, she's doing that again, and
Yeah, because she thinks that, people Biden's
famous
age shouldn't
from it.
run, I guess.
how old is she?
She's in the same cohort.
Okay, but she's different.
Without getting into ageism. I get that young people
I-
don't want old guys like Biden to run. I get it. But, sometimes experience matters, and sometimes when it's down to a choice, you get who your options are and you take the least worst option, which is what most people do in politics.
Yes.
Unless you're MAGA.
Yeah. Right. They take the worst. That's true.
And they take the worst option because they want the worst option.
That not only do they agree with the person, there are still some people who would say, well, he's not the worst option. But I do believe that there's a significant number of MAGA people who would say things like, well, I believe he is actually the worst option, and I think the American government is the worst, and we should collapse it and ruin everything.
Right.
You're
That's
weird,
why,
but okay.
I think trends are moving in the Democrats' direction, not just, in terms of sentiment, but in terms of what we see with the elections. All the elections post-2016, but certainly the elections post-Dobbs,
Okay.
where it really mattered. I see people have looked at the Virginia numbers very, very closely.
All right. That's what it was we were going to do. Yeah.
People like Susanna Gibson wound up losing by about 700 votes.
Okay.
SD24 in the Pocosin area. I have a great interest in that area, just interesting people there.
Oh.
Pocosin is very Republican, but the district itself is sort of balanced. And the Democrat lost the Senate seat, again, by about 700 votes. In other words, if you look at all the different races in House and Senate, this is one of those dumb things that Peter Baker said. Well, the Democrats only won by 1,000 votes here and there, and so you shouldn't think of it as a big win for Democrats. Had the Democrats won 750 votes in about 5 or 8 different places, it would have been a blue tsunami. It wasn't. It didn't. You can't look at it that way. That's not what happened.
But had they?
But those elections were all very, very close. Every vote matters. And, had you done a better job of mobilizing your side prior to the election, you, in fact, might have won. And so, having the resources to do that is important. And that's one of the reasons why, with finite resources, you really don't want to waste them in a you absolutely cannot win situation unless you have enough money to give there and to these other places where it really does matter.
Yes.
Well, so, just keep that in mind.
We had some bazillionaires. Right. Okay.
On the Republican side, Nikki Haley is emerging as the best contender to take on Donald Trump, meaning she's at 11%, whereas everybody else is in single digits, and Trump's still at like 45. So she's not going to win. She's not going to be the nominee. She's way far behind Trump. And the scary thing is she's probably the best the GOP has to offer. And she wants to start a war with Mexico, and if Trump is a nominee, she'll vote for him. So, she's not a good candidate, but she's a very good politician. And I think that she's going to eat DeSantis's lunch when it comes time to see what happens. She'll be the last one to drop out.
All right. Well, let's see what he has for lunch. She has to wear open source shoes, so you can't hide any lifts in those. So she's at least eliminated that stumbling block along the way. Okay.
Well, as she's
and the other South Carolinian is out. There is that. Okay.
I don't know if there's anything to say about Tim Scott dropping out other than why was he running in the first place?
Oh.
He couldn't even win his own state.
Well, it's weird that the two of them are in there, but I guess that makes a certain amount of sense with but the Republican primary in South Carolina, is that early too? They do it at about the same time, don't they? So it's an important state, and it's okay. I guess that makes some sense then. Not why he was running. That never made any sense, but I guess a South Carolinian would have a pretty good chance. But
but I mean, the point is that the sunny, optimistic candidates like Mike Pence.
Oh, what? All right.
Compared to the others.
Yeah, I guess.
And Tim Scott are running in a primary where the average median Republican primary voter is Mark Wayne Mullen, who wants to start fights with people.
Right. That's true. Well, why do they like Nikki Haley?
What's their purpose? What's their point? And that's why Nikki Haley won't be the nominee.
Yeah. Right. So, okay, I guess the next person to be compared to Trump I guess be compared to DeSantis and then lose will be Nikki Haley. But what happens to DeSantis? What does he in the end?
DeSantis goes back to Florida.
When? I'm waiting.
Not soon enough.
I guess. I'm sort of wondering whether the you're a loser dropout cycle started on him too early and everyone will ignore him. Well, he'll eventually drop out. And then everybody else drops out and holy crap, DeSantis never dropped out. He's still here.
Yeah, but he's still a loser.
Yeah, but I wonder if he ends
up being... Now
he's
at 3%, but he never dropped out. Yeah. So what difference does it make? Ramaswamy will never drop out. But, who cares?
Well, yeah. I mean, I guess this was all just vanity for him anyway. So I guess
I think it's important for him to be on every debate stage because then you get to remember just how obnoxious the whole Republican Party is. Yes, I guess so. And he's a good source of more dumb ideas about how easy it would be to run government when Trump, if he's not going to show up and spew them, Ramaswamy comes and says, I have a magic formula for fixing the size of government. And what was it? So his proposal was everybody with a social security number ending in an odd number who works for the federal government is fired. Yeah. And now that's it. So do you remember years and years and years of us saying that for the most part, when you look at the data, debates don't matter in terms of how people vote? Did I say that? Yeah, probably. I know I said it. I know, yeah. I might have been throwing all of that out with you. You're saying if you said it, I have said for years that I don't watch debates. So yes, I guess that means the same thing? if you do watch them, it doesn't really sway voters because the only people watching are people who are already committed to one thing or another. Otherwise, they wouldn't be watching in the first place because normal people don't watch debates, which you just proved.
Ken Bone.
Yeah. So,
okay.
So we have these debates, but I think they matter in the sense that they do help define the Republican Party's being nuts, and I thank Vivek Ramaswamy for that.
Yeah, right. Okay, well, you can't argue much with that. They do show how weird and ridiculous they are. It's been a long time since we had, I guess, I don't know. Even when it was Democratic primary debates, I just don't watch.
They don't matter. I mean,
You're right.
Did you watch the debate where the fly landed on Mike Pence?
No, I watched the YouTube clip.
You see?
Yeah.
I mean, that was arguably a reasonably important debate. Nobody watches them.
Yeah. Well, they don't make any sense. They don't talk about anything that's actually going to happen or how they would.
And there's no point in waiting for a Gerald Ford, Eastern Europe is not dominated by the Soviet Union remark because nobody cares. And
it will show. Look,
they spin it afterwards,
happens,
and then
I'll see it on YouTube.
The people say, "Well, you're lying. You never said that," and fake news, and it just doesn't matter anymore.
This is an argument somehow for YouTube to host the debates, actually, because that's the only time I watch.
Well, TikTok.
If something happens,
Make
I'll see
the debates
the video.
really short,
I guess, and you have to dance.
Yeah, exactly.
That would probably work.
Yeah.
All right.
Swami wins TikTok debate.
Sure. Why not? And
he got the most in the least amount of time.
He ate a ghost pepper and danced.
Right. This is from The Hill, which I thought was sort of relevant. Did last week's elections mark the end of the anti-woke parents' rights movement?
Yes. Piece
by Glenn Altshuler and David Whitman. Opinion.
That'd be great.
Columnists here. The American Federation of Teachers claimed that 80% of the candidates endorsed in 250 races were elected. Those would be school board races. AFD President Randy Weingarten praised the results as a victory for opponents of banning books or censoring honest history or undermining who kids are. Liberal and moderate school board candidates did especially well in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Virginia, and Iowa, and, by the way, Connecticut.
Mm-hmm. Right, everyone forgets.
John Vallant, an education expert at the Brookings Institution, suggested that the results might cause candidates to seriously question whether affiliating with far-right groups like Moms for Liberty and the 1776 Project is good for their chances of getting elected.
They have done that.
Maybe.
They've worried about it.
It's not a knockout blow.
Yeah. What they're saying is, I would like to hide that affiliation now and just use your candidate in a box kit, but tell everyone that you're not the source.
So, there's work to be done. But hyperpartisanship and polarization isn't an automatic easy win. And again, this is another way of linking the Republican Party, including locally, with extremist movements. Yes. And people don't like extremist movements.
No.
Except for the extremists. They like it.
I guess that's true.
And MAGA likes the fact that they're extreme. MAGA likes the fact that their representatives get into fights with people. Yeah. MAGA representatives like the fact that Trump is going full fascist, but like the vast majority of the rest of the country does not.
Yeah, well, there was a big backlash against that, and everybody figuring out, just want the local school board to be about, or in bumper sticker land, where we say, the school board meetings are for proud parents, not proud boys. We don't want people storming these meetings, including the candidates for election to the board. Thank you very much.
Right.
I just want there to be books and for the kids to learn. And it's interesting, not only is it tarring the Republican Party, but finally people are catching on to the idea that you can't just slap together some harmless sounding name. Everyone's for moms. Everyone's for liberty. What about moms for liberty? Now, we know what that means. For liberty means not for liberty.
All right. So David Rothkopf is bringing all of this together. He's got a piece out just now. Republicans are fighting a war on democracy all over America. State-level GOP legislators are actively trying to overturn the will of the people. The new speaker is a far-right extremist, and Trump sounds like more like Hitler every day. The technical term for what he sounds like is Mussolini. As Ruth Ben-Ghiat says, if you're looking at authoritarian figures, the vermin stuff is actually closer to Mussolini than Hitler. But,
okay.
You pays your money, it takes your choice. it may be a difference without a distinction without a difference. It's authoritarian, and that's really the point. So Rothkopf goes on to point, they don't care anymore about appearances. Take Ohio. People vote for something in Ohio. The legislature just turns around and said, well, we heard what you said. We're just not going to do it.
Yes, right. And that's a trend for Republican legislatures everywhere. Missouri did it.
Wisconsin did it. Oh, you elected a Wisconsin judge? We'll just impeach him.
Right.
What for? We don't need a reason.
Right.
We don't like the way we think she's going to decide. Well, that's because she's going to decide based on the law. Well, that's what I said.
Yeah, right. Get rid of that thing.
We'll get rid of her before she does that.
You elected a Democratic governor. Governor has no power anymore. Fine.
Yeah, exactly right. So, all of that is, again, it's just easier and easier to link the Republican Party with that trend, with those actions. You see it local, you see it state, you see it national, and that's where we're at. And, basically, that's my segment for today.
Okay. That's a good number of minutes for a segment, I guess.
Yeah, that's pretty good for my 20-minute segment.
Yeah, and we get our money's worth.
I say that because when I originally came on the show, we agreed that I'd do about 20 minutes.
Yeah, make it easy. Like it's not going to be a major investment in your time. Come on, why not?
Right.
But as it turns out, you enjoyed speaking about these things and found that the first half an hour. Wait a minute, there's still something left.
I still have therapy to do. I got more stuff to get out of my chest here.
Right. Well, I appreciate that you stick around to do it. The Ohio legislature poses a huge problem. It'll be very interesting, by the way. I'd love to present this to the people who are, show me in the Constitution where it says, well, it's right here. Yeah, well, what if we don't write that into the Constitution? Huh? But you did. It's
and who decides what the Constitution says?
Right.
And the courts. What if we decide that we are taking over the courts?
Right. Or we decide that we're going to cover our eyes. All the Supreme Court justices will cover their eyes and say, I don't see it in the Constitution. Therefore, so I'm just going to sign this thing. But whether it's constitutional amendments or just legislative changes, the marijuana initiative, question 2, and hey, it magically got about the same 57% support as it turns out. They're going to do away with that one too, because you can't have either, people getting what they want in the Constitution or statutorily. Besides, they're all high anyway, I guess was the reasoning. But if they're just going to, well, they say they're going to undo, and it's a question about the procedure by which they would be able to undo. But I guess since they're willing to do just about anything, I don't know. It's difficult to examine under procedural lens anymore when they just say also get rid of procedure.
Speaking of procedural lens, that reminds me of something I wanted to just comment on, because you taught me about procedure, and sometimes procedure is fun to watch. I'm watching C-SPAN. And the vote is coming up to try to get the continuing resolution passed. Okay. And the way they did it, and again, this goes back to stuff we've talked about on the show, but boy, does it all turn out to be relevant. So Mike Johnson's in a position where the government's going to shut down, and it's before Thanksgiving. He doesn't want this to happen because he thinks Republicans will be blamed. That's the only reason he cares. And he doesn't want it to happen, and so he decides he's going to come up with a new innovation, which is the same old innovation, but, maybe enough of a fig leaf for people to vote for it. He's going to do what's called a laddered CR. Some of the stuff expires sooner than the other stuff that expires. He put defense in the one that expires last to make Democrats happy. It's a clean CR. There's no cuts, and there's no extraneous MAGA wish list stuff.
Okay.
And he thinks that this is the way to keep the government open. So he takes it to the Rules Committee, and the Rules Committee says, we're not voting for this.
I didn't realize that had happened. Okay.
And he says, all right, let me talk to them. So he gets the sense that maybe, possibly, he might be able to convince Massey on the Rules Committee to vote for it. But Massey tells him, even if I do, I'm voting against it on the floor, and there's enough votes against it on the floor, it's not going to pass, because there's a 3-step process. You go through Rules Committee, then you vote on the rule on the floor, and then you vote on the actual thing.
Yes.
And voting on the rule on the floor is one of those things that Democrats generally, as a party, vote no, just because.
Yeah.
So if enough, like 20 or 30 Republicans defect and revolt over the rule, it can't pass. That's what happened.
Right.
Or at least he got the sense, Mike Johnson did, that was going to happen. And so instead he says, all right, I'm going to use a different mechanism. I'm going to suspend the rules. And by suspending the rules, that means you need a 2/3 vote in order for it to pass, which is about 290 votes.
Yeah.
He does that. I'm watching the pomp and circumstance, and somebody stands up and says, I rise to, I forget what they say, something about the committee. And after saying that, then they put the mace on the wall and everybody gets up and they do the vote. I forget the exact wording, but it was kind of cool watching it.
They were probably, I guess, debating things as the committee of the whole, and they needed to revert back into the House in order to move to suspend the rules.
Right,
okay.
And so they do that, and then it turns out that most of the Democrats, except for 2, vote to pass this CR. About 130 Republicans vote to do it, but about 90 vote not to do it. And so it passes about like 300 to 100, whatever the number is there, but very similar to the number that Kevin McCarthy got in his CR. And so it does pass, and then it goes along. And you ask Matt Gaetz and some of the other people, well, isn't this the same thing that Kevin McCarthy did? And they shrug and say, yeah, but, it's Mike Johnson, so we'll give him a pass.
Right. Oh, that must have been what prompted Kevin McCarthy to complain that he believes he was that Gaetz moved against him because McCarthy was going to revive the ethics complaint against him. And I mean, that sounded like it could be a motivation, but I guess that's why it came up again. Like, hey, I actually did the same thing with the CR and got just as many Democratic votes to pass it, and then they threw me out supposedly because Democratic votes. This guy has just done the same thing. Why aren't you throwing him out? And to McCarthy, the answer is, well, he's not moving to revive the ethics complaint against Matt Gaetz, and I did. Whereas, I guess if you ask Gaetz, it was, I hate McCarthy and not Johnson.
Well, that's the thing. So it turns out if you're talking, and I've said this on the show, you can't understand Congress unless you understand how junior high school lunchrooms work.
Yeah, I guess so.
Okay, with Kevin McCarthy giving a kidney shot to one guy and Mark Wayne Mullen threatening to fight another guy. And then it comes down to, well, Kevin McCarthy got thrown out because we don't like him.
Yeah, I mean, that could be it. Of course, that doesn't preclude that. Well, isn't it true? Is the reason you don't like him because he was going to revive the ethics complaint against you?
And one of the funniest suggestions I saw is that wouldn't it be funny if Kevin McCarthy made a motion to vacate?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, right.
Based on the fact that this guy just did something that all the conservatives don't want.
That's true.
It won't happen, but
No,
so,
but it will be fun. He's not going
just
anywhere.
Watching all of that procedure and pomp and circumstance and ceremony and stuff was, kind of amusing. But C-SPAN actually showed, because C-SPAN has fixed camera angles.
That's right.
But they did show the mace being put on the wall, so I actually got to watch that. That was kind of cool.
That is good. Yeah, and it's another opportunity to bring this up. I did see people on social media being wrong. I didn't point it out at the time, but...
somebody was wrong on the internet?
Yeah, I can't believe it.
Didn't get to sleep last night.
I know, I was exhausted. And this has been going on for weeks. But it reminded me, I put it aside because it was wrong but unimportant. But, and I have learned to say, I can let that go for the most part on social media. But I did see people coming out and rejoicing at the ejection of Kevin McCarthy from the speakership, not because they cared one way or another, or maybe they always hated McCarthy, or they just wanted the chaos. But people were saying, this is great. Now there's no speaker, and that means that the C-SPAN cameras were going to have all kinds of fun angles again. And because remember the last time that happened, it was because they couldn't decide on a speaker, and now they can't. Now, it wouldn't really have that much to do with not deciding on a speaker. It was not having a set of rules in place that normally restrain the use of the cameras and fix the cameras and the angles. We now have no speaker, but we do have rules. It's not about whether or not there's a speaker. You only thought that was the case because normally we choose the speaker at the beginning when we also don't have rules. There's no correlation between the vacancy in the speaker's office and the rules. It's just that ordinarily they're both adopted together and then we leave them in place and we don't fool around with it until 2 years hence. So just pointing that out. And there were 6 people or so wrong on the internet. They're not listening because they would never have gotten this wrong if they had been listening to the show.
Absolutely.
So, okay. Well, now we have pretty much used the whole second segment.
Oh, speaking of Maces, the last thing is Nancy Mace.
Oh, did they put her on the wall? They should have.
Like all the Republicans are saying, I can't figure her out. What the hell is she doing?
Yeah, okay. Costume.
Is she on our side? Is she on some other side? Why is she doing what she's doing? What does she stand for? I don't get it.
I don't know. And
bunch of comments about that, and that's great because like Nancy Mace voted to get rid of Kevin McCarthy, but how does she feel about this particular CR and what's she going to do and this, that, and they sort of figured out that like she's crazy.
I guess so. They can't really predict what she's going to do or say. I understand that, what was the big vote from the other day? Murdery Trader Green's impeachment motion. And in this case, the motion to refer her resolution to committee and thereby pretty much stop all action on it. What will Nancy Mace do? And the answer is Nancy Mace will not show up and vote. She will skip the whole thing, and because she couldn't decide whether she, benefits most by being complete lunatic or separating herself from the MAGA wing to try to regain her so-called moderate credentials. So she just, I don't know, maybe she was busy, maybe she had a dentist appointment, I don't know. But
here's the piece in the Washington Post that caught my eye. Jackie Alemany wrote a very good report. A maverick or a MAGA warrior, Nancy Mace tries to be both. After her predictably unpredictable vote to oust the speaker, the South Carolina lawmakers' behavior and record are called into question by other Republicans.
Well, it's a good time for it. The first thought I had in mind was, she's Chris Shays. Right. Maybe that's it. Right, yeah, you asked the question, which one is she? She's both.
The contempt for her was apparent when Representative Dusty Johnson, a mild-mannered Republican from South Dakota, ripped into Mace after she interrupted his hallway interview.
Oh.
Blind ambition has distorted this process enough. Let's be clear, Nancy Mace, it's been a long time since she's done anything productive to move forward this team.
Well, that's certainly true. Though she did come dressed as Captain America one day. That was very exciting, and everybody covered that.
Could she pick up the hammer? That's really the question.
Probably not. And is Dusty Johnson a real name? Mark Wayne Mullen versus Dusty Johnson in an no holds barred cage match. Oh, weren't we going to have a cage match?
Sounds like something from a Prairie Home Companion, actually.
Yeah, right. All right. Well, thank you, Greg, for sticking around for so long. And I know you didn't get everything done, so how about coming back tomorrow and doing it all over again? All right, if you wish. All right. See you then. All right. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. My goodness. You know what? I was just about to close out this article from The Hill as, we'll never go back to the fights story. But as I'm scanning down the page, I'm like, hey, I'm losing the narrative here. What's happening? There's all sorts of additional comments and sniping going on. And I thought maybe I would just skim over with you the last couple paragraphs of the Hill story. The one I'm reading, of course, is Rising Tensions Bring GOP to Brink of Fight Club. Al Weaver is the author of this piece. And, after recounting all of the same stuff, what Mark Wayne Mullen was doing, the supposed elbowing going on in the hallways of Congress, it kind of moved on to a slightly different take on things here. Where does the transition begin here? Let's see. Lawmakers were in part dismayed and in part bemused by the double shot of problems, which comes days before they are set to decamp for their states and districts for the Thanksgiving recess. Yeah, there's a little bit of tension in the air, I suppose, understandably, but you also have personalities, said Senator Kevin Cramer. Remember, there is a Senator Kevin Cramer from North Dakota. When Bernie Sanders is the guy trying to bring order to chaos, things are chaotic because, quite honestly, he's usually the entertainer and not the referee. I mean, that's an unusual view of things, but okay. Ever since we got rid of the powder wigs, this place has been devolving, Kramer continued. Of course, Congress never actually had as a part of their requirement, their dress code, the powdered wigs, but okay. Maybe back in the days of the Continental Congress, but it wasn't a requirement. Anyway, it's time to pass a continuing resolution and get the hell out of here for a bit. Okay, now both troubles stem from personal bad blood that has spilled into public, if only it had spilled. Burchett was among the 8 House Republicans who voted to boot McCarthy from the speakership last month, prompting 3 weeks of House GOP tumult to pick his replacement, leaving fractures that remain unhealed. McCarthy maintained later Tuesday that the contact was incidental. If I would hit somebody, they would know I hit them, the ex-speaker told reporters. Anyway, as for Mullen, he repeatedly defended his actions. The former MMA fighter and member of the National Wrestling Hall of Fame panned O'Brien to reporters as a thug and said he's been running his mouth forever and he probably should have his butt whooped. Careful how you say that. Now, he's the president of the union. I'm still a guy from Oklahoma, /senator. If you're going to say something stupid like that, then back it up, Mullen said. Anyway, yada, yada. No, not at all, he added when he was asked if he had any regrets. At any day, you could back up the... Okay, so he's going to talk about what a tough guy he is. O'Brien was not at all gracious in his tweeting by any means, but, I don't know. I get no points for pointing that out, really. No one cares. Now, where's the other part? Some lawmakers took Mullen's situation in stride. Senator John Thune appeared to smile and jokingly punch the air while walking behind Mullen and a gaggle of reporters after they took part in the Senate GOP's whip meeting. Sanders lamented the back and forth came up during what he had hoped was an important hearing on unions and standing up against corporate greed. I think it's a little bit absurd. We were there to be talking about the crisis facing working families in this country. This should be done in his accent. And the growing gap between the very rich and everybody else, and the role that unions are playing in improving the standard of living of the American people, Sanders said. A very dignified statement. We are not there to talk about cage fighting. Okay. Now, news of the Burchett-McCarthy dust-up brought an interesting connection to light. When asked if he'd seen what happened between Burchett and McCarthy, they asked Mark Wayne Mullen, you were involved in a fight. Want to talk about another fight? Sure. And he says, yes, because it's relevant to me. I love fighting. Mullen told The Hill that he wouldn't take the Tennessee congressman's word for what happened and noted that he had kicked Burchett out of his long-established daily workout group last week. So there's actually a connection. He thinks Burchett is, for some reason, a jerk and a liar. I imagine Burchett thinks Mark Wayne Muller is a jerk and a liar. I think they're probably both jerks and liars. But what? The weekly workout group. You got to have a workout group in order to be taken seriously on the Hill, right? Mullen, a longtime McCarthy ally, pointed to a, quote, lack of character on his part, not McCarthy's, but Burchett's, and said that he doesn't trust Burchett. He noted that he's had lawmakers of different stripes take part in the workouts, even at contentious times. They were allowed to work out with him, and what a great honor that must be. For instance, Kirsten Sinema has worked out with him, and former Senator Martha McSally of Arizona, who got booted out as well. When they ran against each other in 2018, they both worked out with Mark Wayne Mullen. What an honor. And, of course, Jason Crow, Democrat of Colorado, when he was manager for former President Trump's first impeachment trial, and Representative Seth Moulton of Massachusetts when he ran for president. So there you go. Those guys lifted weights near me when I was lifting weights at a time when they were doing a different thing politically than I was. I allowed them to continue, even though it's a gym that's open to all members of Congress, and Mark Wayne Mullen really has nothing whatsoever to do with who gets to access it or not. But he has declared himself to have an awesome workout club, and I can kick you out of it, and now you're not allowed to work out here if I say so. Not really the rule, but, I guess that's what bullies kind of love to do. I can kick anybody out of the lunchroom. I don't have a problem with your differences, but I do have a problem when you can't respect or trust the individual that's in front of you, Mullen said. I have respect and trust for the other ones. I can trust what we say. I can trust what happens among friends, that it will stay among friends. That doesn't sound good. I don't trust Burchett. He's a man that lacks character. Burchett confirmed that he was booted from the early morning workout, saying the senator berated and yelled at him until he left, which Mullen denied, and that Mullen's friendship with McCarthy was the main reason. Okay, Greg told you what was going on here, junior high school lunchroom, and it turns out to be true. And actual newspapers have to report on this nonsense. So, okay, that's a little bit of a twist. I don't know if it gives us any insight into the people, they're kooks, but it does give us insight again into the dumb stuff that they spend their time on and how they make their decisions, the dumb decisions that they make. All right, let's see. Other things to catch up on. I don't know. Do we care? Murdery Trader Green picking more fights just to keep up with who she's fighting with. Green calls GOP colleague and this is the way the Hill puts it in their headline, a P dash 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 dash. Wink, wink. Anyway, it's the place where Donald Trump would grab women, whether they consented to it or not, apparently. Who is it, though? It's not Lauren Boebert this time. It's somebody else. So I guess we got to figure out who that is just so we know, so that if they actually do fight, we understand it a little better. Sarah Fortinsky reports this, again, for The Hill. Murdery Trader Green called fellow GOP Representative Darrell Issa of California, whose name we never really know about how to pronounce. That's the person she's calling names today. Not a hoe. That was Lauren Boebert a couple of days ago, or a garden implement of some kind is all we knew. But like I said, could have been a weed whacker. Why? Because Issa attacked her for lacking the, quote, maturity and experience to understand the proper way to bring an impeachment vote against Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. Now, Issa, not really all that familiar with proper impeachment procedure himself, but whatever. He was upset, I guess, and speaking about, he was probably annoyed that he had to cast this dumb vote the other day. In a post on Twitter, Green included a meme of former President Trump saying, she said he's and again, it's okay. I think he can actually get away once again, these days on network television with the P word, but she said he's a P word. The meme was a response to another post from her official House Twitter account, which also attacked Issa. I don't even know what the hell they're talking about here, but okay. Do we need to know any more about it? Darrell Issa is right. I am a hardworking member of Congress who puts the American people first, but we know that what Darrell Issa lacks, Green posted before, including emojis of 5 different sports balls. Get it? Wah, 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 wah. All right, look, that's enough of this. There's no reason underlying any of this. They don't like each other for stupid reasons. They talk about some of the other fights, I guess, that are going on. And that's the new one for Murdery Trader Green. She gets along with no one. There's nobody, no one can be a neighbor to this woman. She'll fight with every single one of you. She's the craziest one they've got. And she's mad that she's not making any money with it anymore. So I guess she decided to turn up the crazy, figuring that's the way it would work best. Okay, let's see. Other things happening to bring you up to speed with. Trump has been leveling more attacks and daring the various judges who have imposed gag orders against him in his courtroom proceedings to do something about it. Forbes magazine had the report on this one from a couple of days ago. Let's see, this one from the New York trial. Trump escalates attacks on judge and the New York Attorney General. Shares post urging that they face, quote, citizen's arrest. So I guess this was widely regarded as an escalation of the problems. I widely regard the lawnmower and leaf blowers that are going on outside to be an escalation. I would like to impose a gag order on them. What's happening? Former President Donald Trump reposted a social media comment early Tuesday, that suggested the New York Attorney General and the judge overseeing his civil fraud trial should be put under, quote, citizen's arrest, which is not really a thing, despite the fact that, there is such a procedure, just nobody actually knows how to use it, and you really shouldn't dabble in it at all, as the ex-president and his supporters have escalated attacks on the judge and others involved in the ongoing trial. So the worry is that, of course, by telling people that they ought to be subject to citizen's arrest, it almost virtually guarantees, A, that somebody will think that's a good idea, I should do that, and B, that they will, have no idea how one would even effect the citizen's arrest in a proper manner, because that would require investigation and study. So instead, the Republican idea of all this stuff is, well, here's how you do a citizen's arrest. You show up, you impose your will violently on whoever it is you are angry at, and then you say something, blah, 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 citizen's arrest. And those are the magic words that turn it into it's now okay for me to beat you. They may think that you can use the same sort of violence that police think that they can use in effecting a regular arrest, even though they're not supposed to be able to use that much violence. We societally, for some strange reason, still legally allow it, and a very contentious issue, of course. But, so, no, you're not supposed to be able to do the same things as a citizen, but they just view that as, well, I guess if I say it's a citizen's arrest, I can do anything I want to. So that's the danger here. The content of the tweet is not that important. It's the same garbage as always. But I guess so now there are some more actors involved in this. There are some key facts that are bullet pointed by Forbes here. Trump, of course, used his stupid Truth Social to do most of this. And let's see, the Post refers to Letitia James. We all know who that is. And, of course, the judge, Arthur Engeron. Let's see. He claims the whole thing's a witch hunt, yada, yada. Trump's repost comes days after the ex-president wrote himself on Truth Social that James, quote, should be prosecuted herself for committing fraud by convincing Engeron that Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate is worth less than the ex-president claims. That's the particular outrage, I guess, for him. There's also a mention of Elise Stefanik in this. Submitted an ethics complaint against Engeron with the state commission. She is, of course, a member from New York. And the state commission being the one on judicial misconduct, and criticized his alleged inappropriate bias and judicial intemperance, which isn't really on evidence here. While right-wing activist Laura Loomer has gone after the judge by publicly claiming that his wife has a secret Twitter account filled with anti-Trump posts. Engeron's wife had denied that the account is hers. Trump's campaign, James's office, and the New York court system have not yet responded to requests for comment. So, more garbage happening here. But, yeah, I guess the escalation that worried people is the introduction of the supposedly magic words citizen's arrest into this whole thing means that you're going to get kooks with their own idea about what that means, attempting possibly to effect such an arrest at Trump's urging. Okay, so that's kind of what you need to know about this one. Let's shift topics for just a moment and see if we can't read a little bit more about what I hinted at yesterday and is rapidly gaining attention. I had the Politico Europe article yesterday, and now I have the BBC's report following up on it. Ukraine charges Rudy Giuliani's, I put the Kaludi in there, Rudy Giuliani's top local ally with Moscow-linked treason, says Politico. Ukraine's security service says this member of parliament was undermining Kiev-Washington relations under Russian military intelligence orders. Veronika, Melkozerova. It's my best attempt at the last name of the writer here. A Ukrainian MP, member of parliament, because in American Politico they would have to say member of parliament. But in Euro Politico, they just say MP, and everyone knows what that means. A Ukrainian MP who in 2019 helped former U.S. President Donald Trump's lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, lots of tenuous connections here, in his search for dirt on Joe and Hunter Biden, has been charged with treason, not here in the United States, but in Ukraine. Alexander Dubinsky, together with ex-Ukrainian lawmaker Andrei Derkach and ex-prosecutor Konstantin Kulyk, had joined an organization formed by chiefs of Russia's military intelligence, the GRU. Ukraine's security service, the SBU, said in a statement on Monday. I know that's a little oddly connected, but of course, so we're saying Dubinsky, Derkach, and Kulyk, all had been acting under orders or directions from GRU. All of that, according to SBU, Ukraine's security service. Now, although SBU did not name the MP in the statement, the photos and video materials attached to it identified Dubinsky, whose alias, Buratino, was taken from the 1930s Soviet Pinocchio knockoff. And who even knew? That's really some interesting context. And I guess, is that what Veronica Melkozerova brings to the table? The knowledge, one, that he's got an alias, Buratino, and two, that that's actually a reference to a 1930s Pinocchio knockoff. Who knew? And why did the Soviets feel they needed to knock off Pinocchio? This puppet lies, but he lies about the capitalist dogma, I guess. I don't really know. I didn't realize that Pinocchio was particularly anti-socialist, but all right. Dubinsky met Giuliani during his visit to Kyiv in December 2019, while the former New York City mayor and failed U.S. presidential candidate was filming a documentary aimed at discrediting an impeachment probe into Trump. And of course, more than that, it was aimed at somehow finding a way to implicate the Bidens in wrongdoing. That's what the documentary team was there for. The main task of this organization was to take advantage of the tense political situation in Ukraine and discredit our state in the international arena. For this, the group was getting money from Russian military intelligence. Financing amounted to more than $10 million, SBU said. And now we're beginning to see why it was such a problem for the Ukrainian government. According to SBU, Dubinsky, guided by GRU, and remember, he's taking guidance and money from the Russian security services while serving as a member of the Ukrainian parliament. That's how you get to treason and all of this. According to SBU, Dubinsky spread fake news about Ukraine's military and political leadership, including claims that high-ranking Ukrainian officials were interfering in U.S. presidential elections. SBU said the Ukraine group was run by GRU deputy head Vladimir Alexiev and his deputy Oleksii Savin. Why all of this is, of course, so interesting is that you may recall that, like a minor, in terms of the amount of attention it got, a minor thread in Trump's first impeachment pushback was, no, it wasn't the Russians who interfered in the 2016 election. It was the Ukrainians. They were the ones who were actually interfering. Who was saying that? Well, as it turns out, Russia was the one saying we should be having our American allies say it wasn't Russia that interfered in 2016, it was Ukraine. And that might have worked, perhaps if they had started earlier. Or it certainly could have worked for, if part of it had been, look, most Americans can't actually tell the difference between Ukrainians and Russians, and especially difficult when there are members of the Ukrainian parliament who are pro-Russian and are working for Russian intelligence. You can't tell the difference. You must have been confused. What was really going on here was da-da-da-da-da. Now, of course, the problem with that, of course, is Trump did not say at any point, Ukraine, if you're listening, see if you can find Hillary's lost emails, because he knew who he was dealing with. It was the Russians. He hadn't yet, of course, heard the idea from the Russians that Americans ought to be saying that it was really the Ukrainians. And so he didn't know, and he let it slip. Anyway, if found guilty, Dubinsky faces up to 15 years in prison and forfeiture of his assets, SBU added. Both Derkach and Kulik are now in hiding abroad. I did not know that. Dubinsky denied wrongdoing and called the investigation against him political prosecution in a Telegram statement on Friday. I didn't realize that was still operating, Telegram. In October and November of 2019, Dubinsky and Derkach gave several press conferences in Kyiv at which they claimed that based on an investigation by Kulik, they had uncovered corruption and money laundering schemes related to Burisma, a gas company which had future U.S. President Joe Biden's son, Hunter, at one point anyway, on its board of directors. They also claimed U.S. investment funds were involved in money laundering in Ukraine. In 2020, the U.S. Treasury sanctioned Derkach as a Russian agent, undermining America's political system. In 2021, Dubinsky and Kulik were also sanctioned by the U.S. as foreign actors involved in spreading fraudulent allegations involving a U.S. political candidate. So, that sets the base for all this. I'm going to read the BBC article to see if it helps clear things up a little bit. It's a very Euro-centric approach to it, properly so. That's where the charges are being laid. But it's going to take us a couple of days, I think, to be able to concisely explain the full import of this for the U.S. and the cases being brought against Trump and Giuliani and others. Here's the BBC crack at it. Ukraine charges officials tied to Hunter Biden probe and Russia. This time with a picture of Alexander Dubinsky in a T-shirt bearing some graphic artwork of, I don't know what. Is that the clown from the horror movie, or the all clowns are from all horror movies? But which one is that one? I can't remember anymore. But if you see the picture, you'll know which one I'm talking about. And I don't know. Maybe I have it wrong, but it's certainly an evil clown graphic tee, and that seems odd. Now, this is, again, a picture of Alexander Dubinsky, who serves in Ukraine's parliament and is, according to the caption, one of the men accused of working with the Russians. He's in Ukrainian parliament working with the Russians. They're having a war with Russia, but that's the confusion, and that's the confusion that the Russians could have exploited in telling Americans, you can't tell the difference between the two. Even Ukrainian members of parliament are sometimes pro-Russian. But remember that part of the difficulty was always that there were so many ethnic Russians living for various reasons, political and otherwise, in Ukraine, and were seeking to divide Ukraine and support the separation of eastern Ukraine and, I guess, retrocede it to Russia. Anyway, Phil McCausland is the BBC News reporter responsible for this piece. 3 Ukrainians who aided the Donald Trump campaign's efforts to discredit the Biden family have been charged with treason. The 2019 drive was led by former New York Mayor Rudy Giuliani, who was Mr. Trump's personal lawyer at the time. It centered, misspelled because British, on unproven allegations that Joe Biden had corrupt dealings with Ukraine as vice president. Ukraine's security service, the SBU, said the 3 men charged were paid by Russian military intelligence, or the GRU. It added that they had used a tense political situation to harm Ukraine's reputation abroad. The 3 men charged are understood to be current MP Alexander Dubinsky, former lawmaker Andrei Derkach, and ex-prosecutor Konstantin Kulik. Mr. Dubinsky denied the charges. All 3 are said to be members of an agent network led by Russian General Vladimir Alexiev, the department head, or the deputy head, rather, of the GRU. The charges allege they pursued information subversive activities related to the 2020 U.S. election, not 2016, but 2020, and were paid $10 million. The men are accused of helping to spread the falsehood that Ukraine, rather than Russia, interfered in the recent U.S. elections. The allegations against Mr. Biden involved the business dealings of his son Hunter, was at one point earlier, the director of Ukrainian national gas company Burisma. Trump and his allies suggested that Biden, as Barack Obama's VP, encouraged the firing of Ukraine's top prosecutor, Viktor Shokin, because he had been investigating Burisma. Hunter Biden has since filed a lawsuit against Giuliani for the total annihilation of his privacy. It's the total annihilation is a quote of his privacy via the former New York mayor's search for damaging information related to the Biden family. Ukrainian authorities did not explicitly identify Dubinsky, instead using his alleged Russian intelligence call sign, Bertino. And how interesting. Not only because there was a Soviet knockoff of Pinocchio, but I guess we're all supposed to understand something from the fact that even the Russians, in recruiting this guy, decided to call him basically the equivalent of Pinocchio. How much do they really trust that guy? However, the lawmaker identified himself in a Telegram post, saying that a court in Kiev had ordered his detention for 60 days on the basis of the charges, and he showed up for his court date in his graphic tee clown t-shirt for some reason. I don't know whether that was a conscious choice or whether that's just happened to be what he was wearing when they arrested him for all this. Let's see. He faces 15 years in prison and the forfeiture of his assets if convicted. Derkach and Kulik fled Ukraine after Russia's invasion in 2022, the SPU said. Sounds like it would be the perfect time to just move to eastern Ukraine, but apparently not. They took off for good. Okay, so anything else? We'll mine this over the next 2-minute breaks to see whether the last paragraphs have anything interesting and then move on. Hi everybody, it's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Or read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Unclear exactly where we're going to be going after this one, but yeah, I skimmed over the last couple paragraphs. Like I said, I think it's going to take a while for there to be a more concise and U.S.-focused assessment of the import of charging these guys with treason. But, of course, introducing the word treason into the mix with respect to dumb things that Rudy Giuliani was somehow involved in is somehow moving the ball forward, even here in the United States. But it's not him that's being charged with treason yet, but probably should be at some point in the future. But yeah, I don't expect that to happen. But it's interesting that it did happen. And Ukraine's got a more obvious and exaggerated version of our own political tensions because there's a hot shooting war going on in the middle of it, and it's easier to convince people that that their anti-government activities were in fact treasonous when there is in fact an active war going on. Which probably has some dangerous implications for Israel because now they also have an active hot war. Oh, they almost always have an active hot war going on. It's just never, is rarely as openly acknowledged as these incidents when things do break out into open warfare. But yeah, I guess it's something to watch out for. Eventually, I guess it'll probably have to come around to this unless Netanyahu and his government just simply don't have the popular support to get away with accusing other people of treason when there are unresolved criminal charges against him as well. I think it would become perhaps, maybe it's a little bit too obvious for him to start pointing to others and saying you're guilty of criminal violations, particularly treason. But there is a hot war going on, and every indication that there are partisans who might be willing to charge, let's say, people urging moderation in the response in Gaza could, I guess, themselves be charged with treason as well. And in a shooting war situation, I don't know, people are more primed to, I think, accept those sorts of charges. And here in the United States, of course, there are plenty of people who will bristle at the casual use of the word treason and remind us that of various things like, one, we're not a democracy, we're a republic, and two, there's a very specific definition of treason, and yes. But then again, the same people will then come back excitedly and say, the speakership is vacant, no rules for the cameras. See, well, you don't understand every rule. No one does. Anyway, yeah, okay, so I think we'll be hearing a little bit more about that in the coming days, but at least it was on your radar as of yesterday, and we'll see how it develops going forward. All right, let's see. A few other things to share with you. More backgrounders that have been waiting for their chance to be brought to light. Let's see. We need to... There's some domestic... Oh, you know what? While we were on the subject tangentially of Burisma, I put aside something from, end of last week from Empty Wheel. And I know I did make this mistake every time. You can't just, dip a toe into the Empty Wheel stream and understand everything that's going on without reading much, much more. But because Burisma was involved, I thought I would grab this one. Maybe it makes for a good segue, maybe not. But a piece from November 9th at her blog, Donald Trump's DOJ. This fits neatly into both the, I'm sorry to interrupt, I can't even get the headline out. But maybe overlaps both with the story we just read about Rudy Kaluti's partners in collusion, turn out to be actual, Russian agents, so much so and so clearly so that Ukraine has charged them with treason, even as one of them is a sitting member of their parliament. But also, I guess, some overlap via Burisma and all right, well, now I forget what the other overlap piece was. Oh, yes, right. The charges here in the United States being leveled by Republicans, by Jamie Comer and his accusing Biden of having been involved in some sort of corruption because of a loan as between them, and it happened to be for exactly the same amount as a loan between him and his brother, and various shades of hypocrisy that these stories uncover here in the United States. So what are we looking at? Donald Trump's DOJ themselves shut down a Burisma corruption investigation that had been opened while Joe Biden was vice president. So, of course, it's their claim that Biden's corruption is evidenced by his moving to close down investigations into Burisma when he held power. And just like the Comer thing and the loans, it turns out, hey, something that sounds remarkably similar happened under Trump's control, unitary executive control, in fact, of the DOJ. What the hell's going on here? Right in the middle of an impeachment for extorting Vladimir Zelensky to dig up dirt on the Bidens and Burisma, that is to say, Trump's first impeachment, Bill Barr's DOJ, and maybe we can't even call it Bill Barr's DOJ, maybe it's Donald Trump's DOJ, shut down a corruption investigation into Burisma's Mykola Zlochevsky. I hope I'm getting the name even close to correct. Then, days later, Barr set up a process that would insert an allegation that Zlochevsky bribed Joe Biden into the ongoing investigation of Hunter Biden. That is by far, she says, the most scandalous allegation that has come out of the Jamie Comer and Jim Jordan-led effort to gin up an impeachment of Joe Biden. Bill Barr's DOJ shut down an investigation into Zlochevsky's corruption and then mainlined an allegation of corruption involving Zlochevsky, who they had just shut down the investigation on, into the investigation of Joe Biden's son. In other words, there was a guy from Burisma who was under investigation at the time that Trump and Barr were running the DOJ. And because that might have led to a legitimate complaint, a legitimate criminal indictment of some kind against Zlochevsky, but one that was independent of and did not involve Biden. They decided to shut down that investigation because that one factually would lead elsewhere and not to Biden, and instead reopen it as an investigation somehow targeting Biden. That's pretty weird and dishonest. And what happened here? To be fair, she says, the claim that Bill Barr's DOJ shut down a corruption investigation of Zlochevsky didn't come from Comer or Jordan. It came from Chuck Grassley. Okay. In a letter Grassley sent Merrick Garland on October 23rd, I guess of this year, he described what he knew about the genesis of an FD 1023, I guess another of the investigative forms maybe used by the FBI. What's an FD 1023? We got to take a look. She's using jargon on us. Yeah, I mean, is that a FBI interview document like the ones that we heard about before that were, I can't even remember what the situation was, but another, I took a whistleblower report, and this whistleblower said that he talked to a guy who knew an uncle of his who had a friend who had a cousin who said something nasty about Joe Biden, unvetted intelligence. So I guess this is the same level here, an FBI report. So Grassley sends Merrick Garland a letter describing what he knew about the genesis of another one of these reports that he and Comer released during the summer. He described that the 2017 informant report that included a mention of Hunter Biden and led Scott Brady to re-interview that informant in June of 2020 came from a kleptocracy investigation, a bribery investigation into Mykola Zlochevsky, which was opened in January of 2016 by a Foreign Corrupt Practices Act FBI squad based out of the FBI's Washington field office. While Joe Biden was vice president and his son was on the board of Burisma, according to Chuck Grassley, DOJ opened a corruption investigation into Burisma's owner. Now, that corruption investigation into Mykola Zlochevsky was shut down, again, per Chuck Grassley, around 5 months after Donald Trump tried to extort the president of Ukraine for dirt on the Bidens and Burisma, and just 2 months after Rudy Giuliani planned to fly to Vienna to get dirt on Hunter Biden from Dmitry Firtash and a Burisma executive. This is a different set of Ukrainians that he went to Europe to try to talk to get dirt. Grassley described that it was shut down in the very same month, December of 2019, that the House voted to impeach Donald Trump for soliciting dirt on the Bidens and Burisma. The same month that the IRS and FBI obtained a laptop purported to be owned by Hunter Biden, followed a day later by Barr's aides telling him they were sending him a laptop. In December of 2019, the FBI field office in Washington closed a 205B kleptocracy case, 205B and then a redaction, Serial 7 into Mykola Zlochevsky, owner of Burisma, Chuck Grassley revealed. Weeks or days after that investigation was, again, per Grassley, shut down, on January 3rd, 2020, Bill Barr set up a process by which dirt on Hunter Biden, in part dirt that Rudy Giuliani obtained from a known Russian agent, Andrei Derkash, and possibly even dirt that Rudy obtained directly from Burisma, dirt that was once pitched to include a laptop from Hunter Biden, could be shared with the ongoing investigation of Hunter Biden. All right, she's got too many threads going here in one short paragraph. On January 3rd, 2020, Seth Ducharme discreetly, it says here, quote unquote, discreetly tasked the U.S. Attorney for Pittsburgh, Scott Brady, to accept the information from Rudy. But Brady did more than that. He did a search on Hunter Biden and Burisma, or maybe it was Zlochevsky and Burisma. He claimed not to remember in his testimony before the House Judiciary Committee, which led his team to discover the 2017 informant report. That's the process that led to the re-interview of an informant used in 2017 in that Zlochevsky investigation, which led to the report that in 2019, that Zlochevsky claimed to have made payments to Joe Biden that were so well hidden it would take 10 years to find. Unbelievably, FBI failed to write down the date when Zlochevsky made that claim, even though Scott Brady testified his team learned the precise details surrounding the informant's travel to London, where he had the conversation. It had to have happened relatively late in 2019, probably during the impeachment investigation. As Lev Parnas and anyone else who knows the details remotely well will tell you, that claim from Zlochevsky was a new claim. When Rudy sent questions to Zlochevsky during the spring of that year, Zlochevsky said that Hunter Biden had never lobbied for Burisma. And here is the quote, I guess, establishing that. Do we bother to read it at this point? I don't know. This has gotten so convoluted. It's really something. Okay. The truth is, Burisma tried to compromise Joe Biden with Vadim Pozarsky, maybe, making much, for example, of a 2015 World Food Program dinner, to which Biden dropped in to meet someone else. And a lobbying campaign by Blue Star Strategies set up through Devon Archer and run by Eric Schwerin did push Ukraine to halt its investigation into Zlochevsky. I guess these are people that you would have been reading about for a long time if you'd been following Marcy's running narrative on all of this. It did set up 2 meetings for Zlochevsky's attorney in the United States, and here is how it says BSS. I'm not certain who we're talking about here. Described that effort in a filing submitted retroactively in 2022. You know what? All right. It's just all, as always, too easy to lose the thread in here if you're not reading daily. And I'm not. And all right. I'm not certain whether this is going to contribute to our understanding of what happened or is even connected in any way to what happened in charging the Ukrainian MP with treason. Probably not, except for the fact that Burisma is attached to all of this. And I guess the only takeaway that we're able to get out of this is, for all the complaining that the real corruption was that Joe Biden was trying to force the Ukrainians to shut down an investigation into Burisma and its corruption, I guess you can counter that with the charge that, well, here in the United States, we had a corruption investigation going into Burisma and Burisma attached individuals as well, and Trump's DOJ shut those down. So I guess you're back to the Comer and his brother have a $200,000 loan problem too, and we're all supposed to shrug and I guess say either all of it is corrupt or none of it is corrupt, and walk away from there. All right, I don't know. Maybe there'll be some clarifications over the days to come, but yeah, Marcy always makes some assumptions about what people have been reading along with her writing, and like I said, it's always difficult to dip a toe into the empty wheel waters and come away with a clear understanding of what's going on, because, I guess you'll have to wait for the dumbing down of these stories to be printed in mainstream media, ironically enough. Even if she's the only one talking about it now, it needs to be digested by people who understand where the disconnected have their heads at the moment. Okay. So, wow. Let's see. Switching gears. I'm trying to think here. I've got another segment here from our good friend Rosalind McGregor informing us of what's going on in Michigan, and in particular in Ottawa County. And I'm wondering whether, one, do we want to save it for Friday or not? And two, there was some mention earlier on when Greg was on about the various ways in which Republicans are screwing up their local governance when they are entrusted with government. And this, of course, would be another such story. Let's see. Why don't we do that? Why don't we, no, maybe we ought to save it, I guess, for Friday as a break. It's just, we can do a little bit more in setting it up. And instead, we will, I guess I'm hesitant to head over to the conflict in Israel and Gaza about anything, really, quite honestly. But there's an awful lot of very interesting writing going on that, maybe that too is a Friday discussion. But just some very interesting and informative, I guess, narratives that might help you understand. It wouldn't probably not change your mind about things, but help give some clarification as to why the Israeli right wing is the way it is. Although I think the simplest explanation for it still is, look, Netanyahu's political base is a certain weird segment of the country, as is Trump's support here, and they're uniquely strange people, to put it as charitably as possible. Why it has to be charitable, I don't know. But it's catering to that bizarro right wing that, one, keeps him in power, but also keeps him from ever being capable of adopting a mainstream and sensible position that would be even in keeping with majority Israeli opinion, which would still, generally speaking, keep you far away from prevailing sentiment, whether in Palestine or around the world, with sympathizers of the plight of the Palestinian civilians in Gaza. But it essentially spells out why, look, if the parties who are supposed to be coming to an agreement to cease fire or end hostilities are, on the one hand, Hamas, which, is more or less organized around the principle of there should never be such an accommodation with Israel, even just for a ceasefire, even if it's in our best interest or in the best interest of the civilians here in Gaza, we still won't agree to it for various reasons, including a kind of crazy ideology that there's no reasoning with. And on the other side is an Israeli government also captive to people who say, no, there should never be any kind of agreement. We should be absolutist about this and be just as open in our expression of a desire to annihilate the other side as they are about their interest in expressing that desire. Well, it's hard to get a ceasefire out of two groups that actually thrive on continuing to fire even when it makes no sense whatsoever. So there's a lot of interesting writing on that, including, believe it or not, from Tom Friedman, which is not ordinarily a thing that I say, and a very interesting profile in the New Yorker with the continually amazing Isaac Chotiner, who everyone was praising for his ability to get the baddies of history, essentially, in many cases, to go on record and tell you about how bad they are. Although this was a very interesting case, speaking with a longtime settler activist, which, is bound to lead you to amazement at the sorts of things that they're willing to say out loud. But in a very different, they're operating in a totally different context than we are, and it makes them comfortable and confident in saying things that outside of Israel, or in some cases, many places in Israel, are considered outrageous. And they are. They're outrageous and provocative. And that's the problem with dealing with the settlers and deriving your political power from them. They will force you to say incredibly outrageous things. And, bringing that to the table with a terrorist organization looking for a ceasefire deal out of it seems like a bit of a fool's errand. But what else? What other errand can you try? The things that are happening demand it. But what do you know? They're never going to kind of come to that conclusion. All right. It's very difficult to digest, no doubt about it. And God, I don't know. It seems to me like, well, maybe the thing to do is to start on the Friedman article and use that as an opportunity to set the tone, because we've already wandered into the discussion, no matter how much we might try to avoid it. Now, I don't think we have the time to get all the way through it, but we'll give you some taste of what's going on. This, too, a November 9th piece, right alongside Empty Wheels. An opinion piece, of course. Friedman writing, I have never been to this Israel before. It's basically him saying, this is a much changed place since October 7th, and there's very little, doubt about that, and little reason not to have expected it. But it's interesting what he has to say. People warned me before I came to Tel Aviv a few days ago that the Israel of October 7th is an Israel that I've never been to before. They were right. It is a place in which Israelis have never lived before, a nation that Israeli generals have never had to protect before, an ally that America has never had to defend before, certainly not with the urgency and resolve that would lead a U.S. president to fly over and buck up this whole nation. After traveling around Israel and the West Bank, I now understand why so much has changed. It is crystal clear to me that Israel is in real danger, more danger than at any other time since its War of Independence in 1948, and it's for three key reasons. First, Israel is facing threats from a set of enemies who combine medieval theocratic worldviews with 21st century weaponry and are no longer organized as small bands of militiamen, but as modern armies with brigades, battalions, cyber capabilities, long-range rockets, drones, and technical support. I am speaking about Iranian-backed Hamas, Hezbollah, Islamic militias in Iraq, and the Houthis in Yemen. Yeah, we forgot about them in all of this. And now even the openly Hamas-embracing Vladimir Putin. Oh boy. These foes have long been there, but all of them seem to surface together like dragons during this conflict, threatening Israel with a 360-degree war all at once. How does a modern democracy live with such a threat? This is exactly the question that these demonic forces wanted to instill in the mind of every Israeli. They are not seeking a territorial compromise with the Jewish state. Their goal is to collapse the confidence of Israelis that their defense and intelligence services can protect them from surprise attacks across their borders. So Israelis will first move away from the border regions, and then they will move out of the country altogether. And they have, in fact, succeeded in that. People are withdrawing from the border regions, which is, although that wasn't apparently their goal, a territorial settlement, they will take it as a victory. And why shouldn't they? They wanted Israelis to fear and to move away and to withdraw from areas that they have occupied, and they're getting it. So he goes on to say, I'm stunned how many Israelis now feel this danger personally, no matter where they live, starting with a friend who lives in Jerusalem, telling me that she and her husband had just got gun licenses to have pistols at home. No one is going to snatch their children and take them into a tunnel, unless they kill them first, of course. Hamas, alas, has tunneled fear into many, many Israeli heads far from the Gaza border. The second danger I see is that the only conceivable way that Israel can generate the legitimacy, resources, time, and allies to fight such a difficult war with so many enemies is if it has unwavering partners abroad, led by the United States. President Biden quite heroically has been trying to help Israel with its immediate and legitimate goal of dismantling Hamas's messianic terrorist regime in Gaza, which is as much a threat to the future of Israel as it is to Palestinians longing for a decent state of their own in Gaza or the West Bank. I recognize that there will be several who disagree and are infuriated by it, but it's a view. But Israel's war against Hamas in Gaza entails urban, house-to-house fighting that creates thousands of civilian casualties. And, of course, bombing them from afar does so as well, and in worse ways by far. Not that, anybody who gets injured or killed in the fighting cares, well, it was hand-to-hand that I was injured rather than, a bomb being dropped. They're not going to care that much. Anyway. So yes, it will create thousands of civilian casualties, innocent men, women, and children, mostly children as it turns out, among whom Hamas deliberately embedded itself to force Israel to have to kill those innocents in order to kill the Hamas leadership and uproot its miles of attack tunnels. But Biden can sustainably generate the support Israel needs only if Israel is ready to engage in some kind of a wartime diplomatic initiative directed at the Palestinians in the West Bank, and hopefully in a post-Hamas Gaza that indicates Israel will discuss some kind of two-state solutions if Palestinian officials can get their political house unified and in order. And that doesn't sound like they're going to be willing partners in this either. This leads directly to my third deep concern. We'll see if we can't sneak it in here before we sneak out for the day. Israel has the worst leader in its history, maybe in all of Jewish history, who has no will or ability to produce such an initiative. Worse, I am stunned by the degree to which that leader, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, continues to put the interests of holding on to the support of his far-right base and preemptively blaming Israel's security and intelligence services for the war ahead of maintaining national solidarity or doing some of the basic things that Biden needs in order to get Israel the resources, allies, time, and legitimacy that it needs to defeat Hamas. Biden cannot help Israel build a coalition of U.S., European, and moderate Arab partners to defeat Hamas if Netanyahu's message to the world remains in effect: help us to defeat Hamas in Gaza while we work to expand settlements, annex the West Bank, and build a Jewish supremacist state there. Yeah, well, that's a hell of a place to have to jump out of a Tom Friedman article, but that's what we knew we were getting into with just a little bit of time left. However, we do have, of course, Thursday and Friday to explore all of these things. And Justice Putnam following us up right here on Netroots Radio with the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Not that he's going to be going directly to Israel, Gaza, but I'm sure he won't be ignoring it for long. But he does have a menu of sorts for us about what's coming up on the show next.
NetrootsRadio.com. You have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
Well, first of all, of course, a Trump conviction is more likely as aides confess to the RICO prosecutors, as we read yesterday. And on the rest of the menu, a Detroit police corporal accused of shooting 3 photojournalists with rubber pellets while they covered the George Floyd protests has been ordered to stand trial. Huzzah.